Hello and good evening everyone, and welcome to Brookvale Groby Learning Campus Parent Partnership Meeting. My name is Mandy Bean, I'm the acting head teacher this year, and I must say it's the first time that I've ever done one of these meetings via a Google Meet. And having it presented on YouTube. So I'm hoping that we don't have any technical hitches and things all go smoothly. But please do bear with us in case that happens. The majority of the meeting is going to be in the form of a presentation. I mean, normally when you would come into the school hall, we'd have it projected in the hall and we'd be talking through things, and you'd be able to see my face as well as the slide. But with this one, the Google Meet, I'm going to be presenting the slides and you'll hear my voice. I am joined by some additional members of staff this evening, and I'm just going to introduce them quickly before I go into the present mode. So we've got Mr. Will Teese, who is our new head teacher, joining us in August. Good evening, Mr. Teese.
Good evening, everyone, and I hope you find this useful and productive, despite the fact that it's revolutionary in its approach.
Thank you. And then we've also got Mr. Godwin, who's our senior deputy head teacher, and he's in charge of the pastoral side of the campus.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, if you've seen any of the videos, the latest of which has gone live today, then you'll have seen me a couple of times already.
And finally, we've got Mrs. Tina Rumming.
Hello, nice to meet you all. I'm actually the pastoral manager and will be head of year 7. So lovely to see you all.
Okay, thank you for those introductions. And yes, like I say, hopefully that we'll be able to get some of your questions answered, and you know, it'll be a good introduction to life at Brookvale Groby. We're going to go through some of the housekeeping bits and pieces, but then we're also going to move on to looking at our ethos and values and who we are and what we're all about. And actually, Will's going to take over at that point and talk through that. Then I'm going to talk to you about kind of where we come from and the journey that we've been on in our approach to teaching over the last 4 or 5 years, and then finally Mr. Godwin is going to finish off and he's going to talk to you about this year's transition, and you know, in the absence of the physical transition, students coming onto campus and spending a couple of days here like we would have done in the past, Mr. Godwin's going to talk you through how it's going to work for this year. So I'm going to now go into present mode and you will see me take over and present the slides. Let's just hope that we have got them. This is just going to take a couple of minutes. We need to go back to the beginning. Sorry about this. Here we go. First slide. Yes, so welcome. Like I say, it is our unusual parent partnership meeting, and there will be a number of people that won't be able to log on to this live this evening, and this is being recorded and it's being put onto our website this evening. So I'm going to go through, and even though I've done introductions already, talk you through so that you've got the photographs of people ready there, and if you want to sit down with your son or daughter and go through it again, you can see who people are. So like I say, my name is Mandy Bean, and we've got Will Teese with us here this evening. We've got 2 deputy head teachers. Carol Hubbard is the curriculum deputy, but here we've got tonight the senior deputy head teacher, Mr. Greg Godwin, and he's going to be speaking towards the end of the presentation. We've also got Mrs. Tina Rumming, who's introduced herself already. It's going to be the head of year 7, and she's also the pastoral team leader Other key people that you might hear from via email or you might be in contact with is Mrs. Park, who does all the, we call her matron, and does all the medical side of things with transfer. And then Mrs. Toynton, who's our Senko. And again, some of you might have come across Mrs. Toynton already. But these people are there to really give your son or daughter a lot of support where it's needed. And these will be key people. Now, you might have come across these people in our introduction video, and there's a hyperlink to the staff introductions video down at the bottom there. It is also on our website, but just in case you've not seen it yet, do have a click on that as well, because each of those people say a little bit more about themselves and their roles. Two other key people who again appear on our video is Mrs. Smart, the business manager, and Mrs. Lee, the student services manager. And I know that there are often a lot of questions about the bus stops and the parent pay, our cashless catering system, and how all those things work if you're not used to them. A lot of the information is contained within the welcome booklet. And again, the welcome booklet is on the website, and hopefully, you know, you'll have your questions answered if you're able to look again at the welcome booklet. But you may need to email in, and it'll be Mrs. Lee who deals with all the buses that you'll be conversing with, and Mrs. Smart, our business director. So at that point, with the introductions completed, I'm going to hand over to Mr. Teese, and he's going to talk to you about our vision. Hello, Mr. Teese. Are you on mute at all, Mr. Teese?
No, he's come back to life now. So,
all right, thank you.
Yeah. So a warm welcome to you all. Thank you so much for joining our community in August. We're really looking forward to working with you all. I'm certainly looking forward to working with you and your children in the coming years. The school has got a very proud tradition, a very strong reputation within the community, and rightly so. I'm keen to make sure that that improves moving forwards. And the vision there, which has been with the school for a number of years now, is something that I fully subscribe to. So that sense of valuing every student, I'm a firm believer in that. As a parent myself, I know that your children are hugely important. We want the best for them, and they need to be valued, and they need to be more than just a number on a spreadsheet in a system. So every student is important to me. I want them to have an exceptional experience and an outstanding education when they come to our community. Behind that, aspirations and high standards. I also want students to achieve excellence and pursue excellence. I want them to be the best versions of themselves that they can possibly be, so that they can go on to do whatever it is that they aspire to become in their futures. I think it's really important that as a community and as a school that we give them all of the skills, the character traits, and the academic success to open up the doors to their futures. And that is really what this vision is about, valuing everyone and achieving excellence, and doing that in all aspects of our work. You able to progress, please, Miss? In terms of the motto that underpins that, working hard is obviously going to be crucial. We expect students to work hard. We want them to work hard, because pursuing excellence only comes about through hard work. In terms of being kind, we want our community to be a kind, tolerant, respectful place where students feel safe and they're motivated to come to school every day. So working hard and being kind is hugely important to us. Below, working hard is exemplified in more detail. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like self-control within their learning, not getting distracted, following instructions, and being ready and organized to learn, being prepared for what challenges the day is presented to them, being kind, self-control with others, so behaving in an appropriate fashion around school, with other people, criticism, and they would like to be treated themselves. So being respectful to the community, being respectful to people within that community, living with tolerance, and doing acts of kindness within the community as well. So our motto, very simple, and we strive to live that in everything that we do. The next slide, please. Now, clearly, with all that's happened over the last academic term, it is a very challenging time to be joining schools, but also an exciting time. You're still going to be coming up from primary school to secondary school, and that is an exciting time in your life. And it will continue to be an exciting time. There will no doubt be some challenges on the horizon with your arrival in school. It may not be as we intended or as you'd first hoped, but we will get through those challenges. We'll work closely with you, and we sure that you staff, you get to know the other people within your classes, you make those friendships, and that the school is going to be the exciting next chapter that you thought it would be when you move on from primary school. At this point in time over the current term, the school's been working really, really hard to make sure that education continues at the highest standard, and it will continue to do so moving forwards. There's lots of plans being put in place for the new academic year, and the guidance from the government is coming out on a daily basis, and we're responding to that. Whatever that guidance is, we will make sure we not only meet that guidance, but ensure students get a fantastic, positive experience from their learning. The next slide, please. So we don't know right now what that will look like. Obviously, social distancing has been changed this week from 2 meters to 1 meters plus. That will have an impact within the school in terms of how many students we can now accommodate, movement around the school site, the number of students within classes, and potentially how those lessons might be organised and structured. But with the guidance that's emerging, and we've been promised more guidance this week by Gavin Williamson, the Education Secretary, we'll be in a clearer position to make those plans in readiness for the new academic year. Their intention is very clear that they want all students back in the new academic year, but clearly safety is still of paramount importance to us. All those issues around social distancing, hand hygiene and hygiene are still going to be in place. We have the protocols in place currently within the school and the campus, and we'll continue to adhere to all the guidance from the DfE and from Public Health England to make sure that your child is safe when they come to our community. Clearly, as with any school, partnerships are important, and there's perhaps no more important partnership than the partnership between home and with the school. You need to be confident that you're sending your child somewhere where they're going to be looked after, cared for, loved, and encouraged. That's what we want to do. The mechanisms to doing that are very clear. Every student has a form tutor, and that form tutor is the first port of call for any concerns or queries that you might have about your child's performance, about their well-being, or how they might be coping with their integration into secondary school. There will be tutor evenings throughout the academic year. Currently it's scheduled for the 17th of September. There are progress evenings too, where we'll look at their academic progress and how they're accelerating towards their targets. That's scheduled for the Thursday, the 10th of June. And there are also 4 written reports and 2 interim reports. They are our main forms of communication. But clearly alongside that, there's also phone, email, and you can also add notes into their planners and organisers, because their form tutor will check that on a weekly basis, sign it, and the expectation is that's signed at home as well. Alongside that, our partnership in terms of communicating with parents, we've got all the social media channels you'd expect alongside the website and the newsletter, which gives a wealth of information about what we do, our policies, our practices, and our procedures. If there are ever any queries that you don't think the tutor can answer, the best thing to do is to contact reception and they'll direct you to the relevant person. But communication is really, really important, and I'm keen to make sure that those lines of communication are really strong with home moving forwards. If there's an issue, we need to know about it, work on it together to come up with a solution and ensure that your child achieves the best.
Thank you. I'll just come in there. Mr. Thiessen, just say a little bit about the campus website, because we've changed it over the last fortnight in preparation for the transition. We've got a new window on the website. there is year 7 and post 16 transition, so you know what it looks like, and all the documentation that you've received, the letters and stuff since we started the process, they're all repeated on the website there. And Mr. Godwin is going to talk you through more things about the website later. And as Mr. T said about social media, we do have a member of staff that looks after our social media. Her name is Mrs. Anderson, and you know, she posts regularly. So if you're on Facebook and you're on Twitter and you haven't liked Brook Vale Groby yet, please go and seek us out and like us, and then you can follow the feed on Twitter and on Facebook. There's so many things. It is regularly updated. And Mrs. Anderson, I've put her email address down at the bottom there because she welcomes contributions from parents, because often our students are achieving things at home that we don't necessarily know about. They might be excelling at sport or in the arts fields that we don't know about. So we want to know, we want to share. So please do get in contact with us. And these are just a couple of pages from the website recently. Yeah, on the left-hand side, we've got the Facebook page, and Mrs. Anderson was sharing a YouTube video that was created by all the members of staff not long after we closed due to the coronavirus, and wishing all students well and telling them how much we miss them. Then on the right hand side, these are a couple of posts from Twitter. The one at the top is where we donated stuff to the Leicester Royal Infirmary and to Loros. We donated some Easter eggs. And then below is one of the PE feeds, so at BGLC_PE. That's a really good one to follow as well, because if your son or daughter is out on a fixture, it's often the place that the PE staff communicate with parents about what time students are going to be arriving back on campus to be collected and things like that. So yeah, please do go and seek out those and follow us, and have a look back at some of the previous posts. Back to you, Mr. Teese.
Hi again. So as with any school, we have got high standards, and those high standards exist because we want the best and we're pursuing excellence. And it's proven that with high standards, student outcomes are increased, and student outcomes are the key to the student's future. So those high standards are there for all students to achieve their full potential. And because we value every student, we have those standards, and we expect those standards to be adhered to by all students at all times. That's how the community works. It's how the community currently works, and it's something I'm really keen and passionate that is continued moving forwards. We're striving to excellence, and we want excellence pervade in all the things that we do. And those standards go across all areas of school life. So the quality of written work, the quality of their independent study at home, how they behave as they move through the corridors, their uniform, how they approach their studies, their attitudes to lessons. Those high standards are really, really important. You will have had lots of information around uniform, PE and kit and equipment and the expectations that we have around those areas. And clearly, you know, we've just gone through some very challenging times where families financially may be struggling. If there are issues with the ability to buy a uniform, please contact the school as early as possible, and we will work with you closely to see what we can do. But that uniform is of paramount importance, as is the PE kit. Equipment. Students need to come equipped and ready to learn. The equipment list is shared. It's very simple. It's all the things you typically expect students would have. Those things are key for students to be ready to learn, and we expect that they will have them on a daily basis, and they will be checked and picked up within their tutor time. Punctuality. If we're going to be ready to learn, we need to be there on time. We need to not disturb other lessons and other people's learning by being late. So punctuality is really, really important. And it's one of those character traits that sets students up for futures, when in the workplace, punctuality is also valued. Attendance, clearly given the significant gap in education that's just happened, attendance is going to be vital moving forwards. We're going to be looking to see what we can do to address the gaps in knowledge moving forwards. So attendance is going to be key to make sure those gaps don't broaden any further. Attendance and high attendance is research, and all the data show strong correlation between attendance and high outcomes. So it's something we really encourage parents to support us with, making sure that your children attend on a regular basis, are there on time.
I'm not hearing Mr. Teese at the moment. I hope I'm not talking over you, Mr. Teese, and that it's my signal in the office here on campus that's poor. I wonder if Mr. Godwin and Mrs. Rumming, whether you're still able to hear Mr. Teese.
No, we lost Mr. Teese briefly there as well, but we can hear you loud and clear, and the picture's now sharpened for Mr. Teese, so hopefully that's got better again.
Can you hear me now?
Sorry, Mr. Teese, we lost you for a moment.
Okay.
I think you were on behaviour.
Yeah, in terms of behaviour, really, really important that behaviour is of the highest standard. Behaviour is critical for everyone's success. We will have high standards around behaviour and high expectations around behaviour, and disruption in lessons won't be tolerated because it's important that every student has that chance to learn. Could you progress to the next slide, please? In terms of vision moving forwards, we've touched on what the motto is, what our core values are, and our vision is very much looking at our curriculum. What is it that we are offering our students? How is that setting them up for their future? Have they got the strength of character? Have they got the character traits? Have they got the skills that they're going to be equipped for the world of work when they move forward to their next steps? We're also going to be looking at learning and teaching, and the school has got a very, very strong track record of research and evidence-based practice that informs what is done both within the curriculum and within teaching and learning. That is something that I'm very keen to ensure continues moving forwards, because that is a sign of an outstanding school. The motto we've touched on before, and that is something, again, that students will be drilled as they go through the school about working hard and being kind to each other as they come through in their tutor times and within their lessons. If they're doing that, they will be successful. Values, we have a list of values presented on the school website. They tie into what we've control within their learning, self-control with others, social intelligence along with emotional intelligence, gratitude and being thankful, curiosity and creativity, zest, grit, and a growth minded individual who can be successful in the world of work and later on in their adult lives. They are the things that we look for, they are the things that we seek to develop, and they are the things that we'll also celebrate with our children as they come through our community. Next slide, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Teese, for talking us through our values and the vision. And you touched on the campus having a strong background in terms of research. And I'm going to take a few minutes to actually talk you through that research base, what we've been doing, and how it manifests itself in terms of what goes on in the classroom. So it's interesting, isn't it? We've got used to listening to the daily briefings with the Prime Minister, and he's got his scientists on either side of him, and he's saying, what does the research say? What does the science say? And that really strikes a chord with us here. And we started this the heavily engaged in research journey about 4 or 5 years ago. And that just gives you an insight in some of the literature on education and what works and what doesn't work that we've been reading as a group on campus. In particular, these 3 articles and pieces of work that we focused in on, and we've got Rosenshine, Dunlosky and cognitive load theory. Those 3 in particular the whole campus has focused on them. We've had teaching and learning groups, so we've met in the professional development time, and we've discussed them, and we've thought about what these articles are saying and how we can use the knowledge within the articles to help our practice and to help students on campus learn. So the first one I want to talk about is the cognitive load theory, and actually a little bit more is about these articles is contained in one of the links that you've got on the website. I think it's a guide to parents, and you can read a little bit more about them in there. But the cognitive load theory is a lot of the neuroscience about how the brain is actually working and how we can use our knowledge of how the brain processes instructions, and how we can cater, we can adapt our lessons to cater for that. So we've also looked at Rosenshine's principles of instruction. So that's recommendations on how we can structure our lessons in certain ways so that it supports students' learning, so that we can chunk it down into smaller steps so that we don't get the overload on the brain that is talked about in the cognitive load theory. We've also really focused in on Dunlosky and the work that he's done on strengthening the skills of the students so that we take students through the most effective ways that they can learn. So all of that work went on about 3 years ago, and we started our first 2020 daily homework 2 years ago. So it's been going 2 years now. So what we introduced was an hour's worth of homework every day, and we split it into 3 lots of 20 minutes. So 20 minutes reading, 20 minutes maths, and 20 minutes on the knowledge organisers. And this is an example of a knowledge organiser, because you might think, what is a knowledge organiser? And so that reading that we've done from the cognitive load theory and the things we've learned from Rosenshine is that students learn better if they arrive at the lesson with some preloading of information that they've learned and they're familiar with at home, so that when they get into the lesson, there isn't too much and there isn't an overload, and then the brain goes mush and they can't understand it. So all of our staff in every single department have created a whole bank of knowledge organisers. This is a French one here, and we've got one organiser that lasts about a 6-week period, and the aim is for the students to learn off by heart all of the information that's on that knowledge organiser. So they've been structured and designed, teachers working together to bear it down to the absolute crucial knowledge for that 6-week period that we'd like the students to learn off by heart, and they're put together. So how does it work in terms of homework, and how might that be recorded, the work that students do on the knowledge organisers? So when the students arrive, they'll all get a student diary, and there's a half page per day for students to complete to show their 20 minutes worth of work on the knowledge organiser. We take them through how to use a knowledge organiser, but the best way of learning that whole sheet off by heart is by quizzing. We use a method called look, cover, write, check. So you're looking at the knowledge organiser, covering it up, seeing if you can write it down from memory, and then checking it. And so that evidence, we like it to be, interactive, and to be able to see it in the student diary. And then the tutor's role is every Monday, they check student diaries to see that evidence there for every day of the week, that we can see some quizzing that's been done. So doing it this way, it's active, not passive, because again, the research says, this is from Dunlosky, if the student is just reading the knowledge organiser and not doing the writing down and then the check-in, the look, cover, write, check, as is written there, they're not as effective in learning it. So, we know that the best way is for them to write some notes, and that's what the tutor is going to check every single Monday. In addition to the tutor checking on a Monday, there's also quizzing on a weekly basis in lessons. So the French example of the French knowledge organiser that we saw, that would then be quizzed within French lessons, so that the teachers are checking on that knowledge, that's been learnt off by heart. And then the beauty of it is students arrive at the lesson with that knowledge preloaded in the brain, and then we can use the knowledge and apply it and get quality learning taking place as a result. So this is the knowledge organiser over at the student diary. Over at the top left-hand corner, we can see it's an A5 ring-bound student organiser. There's the half a page for each day, and then at the end of the week we've got a log for the reading and the maths. So there's an example. We've got 3 different subjects there, just to show you what it might look in each of the subjects. But often students might dedicate the whole of one day to, you know, say 10 quiz questions about a history topic on their history knowledge organiser. But that's the kind of thing that we would expect to see, and tutors will be looking for on a Monday morning. We do often find that students don't have enough space in their diary, so they create an additional book and they bring that in to show the tutor where they've been doing additional recordings. And that's an example of the reading that's been done and the maths work, and there we've got parents' signatures, and the teachers sign it in addition. So all of these knowledge organisers are electronic, and you know, we expect students to log on to the website every day. If you go to the top right-hand corner, you can see the login section there, and once you log in, it just opens up a whole vast set of resources for students. So as you can see on the screen, we've got a My Drive and a Team Drive. So students' own work that they're creating is in the My Drive, and there'll be a lot in there. And then in the Team Drive is stuff that's shared with them by different departments. So we have one Team Drive called Knowledge Organisers. And once you click on that, I'll show you the next screen. There you can see for each year group, we have a folder, and you go into the Year 7 folder, and there'll be each of the subjects and their series of knowledge organisers. So you can work with your son or daughter, and you know, you can be working on the knowledge organisers. So you know, when students say, sometimes I remember my children saying this, "Oh, I've not got any homework." Well, actually, there's always work that we can be doing, always knowledge organiser learning that can be done throughout the whole year. In addition to the knowledge organisers, all students will have a learning journey, because we know how important it is. And again, this is our research that tells us this, how important it is for a student to feel that they're on a journey and they know what the end of that journey looks like, and the different phases along the journey. So this is a science learning journey, and as you can see, it's broken down where there's topic tests throughout the year. Down at the bottom, on the bottom axis, we can see autumn term, spring term and summer term. And you can see a summary of the kind of things that students have been doing in lesson time. So again, that's a fantastic opportunity for you as a family to sit down and have a look at the learning journey, have a conversation about the learning that's happening and what skills are being developed at the same time. This next one, this is an example of the textiles learning journey, and that's slightly different because textiles is on a rotation. It's on a 9-week rotation. It doesn't go across the whole year. So again, as you can see listed there, we have got each week the kind of things that will be happening in textiles. And the feedback we had from students and from parents last year is that these are really good to plan that learning and work together. We have a facility within our website that offers parents an opportunity to sign up for a weekly email that allows you to keep in contact and see the things that are being posted on the homework, and see the which actual knowledge organizer the teachers are suggesting that students learn each week. So I'm just going to play you a video. Hopefully this one will work. Produced by Real Smart, that introduces you to smart parents. So that, as you can see, our e-learning platform is Google based, and we work with Real Smart that integrates the homework and the Google Classroom and the website and emails, and brings it all together. And parents will be given information with a login and a password that you can use to sign up. So you don't automatically get the weekly email from Smart Parent. It's something that you need to sign up to, and we thoroughly recommend that all parents do sign up to that, because it keeps you in contact with, like I say, the work that's been set in the Google Classroom. It gives you updated information on a weekly basis about attendance and also achievements. So do look out for that. That will be in the beginning of the new term once all the students have registered on our platform. Okay, that's it for me. I'm going to now hand over to Mr. Godwin, who's going to take you through what we're going to do this year in terms of transition.
Good evening, everybody. Hopefully by now you're familiar with my face from the videos. I'll try and smile a little bit more than I have done in the last video, so there's an apology. If you've not yet seen our tour of the campus video, Mrs. Rumming, who's sat next to me this evening, and I star in that, although star would be a strong word for what you might see there. So please forgive us. We are more smiley than we perhaps appear on that particular video. Obviously, transition this year is very different from the way that transition has looked in the past. And I suppose before I say anything else, and you start to get very concerned about times and dates, the thing I want to reassure you about is that we recognise how unsettling this must be, probably for you, but almost certainly for your children, even if they're not saying it to you. I suspect that lots of you suspect that some of the stoic faces they're showing to you, perhaps they're there to cover up some of the anxiety they would understandably be feeling. And over the next 2 weeks, what we're going to try and do, as much as anything else, as far as the school is concerned, is leave them going into their summer holiday feeling confident about what it is that faces them in September. Even if that means we can't be quite as specific as we might like to be in terms of exactly what the first day in September will look like, depending upon when we get that guidance that Mr. Teese talked about earlier. As Mrs. Bean has already mentioned, we've got the website, and hopefully you picked up a letter that came under my name at the end of last week, possibly in your inbox this morning, that started to point out some of the activities that will appear in that section of our website with increasing regularity over the next few days. And some of what I'm going to say now will be different for some of you, depending upon when whether you're in one of our main feeder primary schools, from where we have lots of students arriving, or perhaps if you've got a son or daughter is perhaps one of only a handful, or in one or two cases, perhaps the only student arriving from the school that you are part of currently. And so we've put on a variety of activities, but whatever activity we put on, whichever school you have been in, it will, at the end of the day that it's taken place, appear on the page that Mrs. Bean has just put up on the screen there now, and you will find that list of activities, that list of videos that increases over the next few days and weeks. To give you a flavour of later this week, the things that you should be looking for, tomorrow you will receive at home, probably addressed to yourselves, a letter that tells you which tutor group your son or daughter has been placed into, which will be probably the first tangible thing that's unique to them. There's 9 tutor groups in year 7, and they will each have been allocated to one of those. As far as that allocation is concerned, if they come from one of our bigger feeder primary schools, from which we might have a number of students coming, there is every possibility that there will be familiar faces in there. We don't undertake to necessarily say that you will be with your best friend from the school that you've come from, simply because with 250 something students to cater for, we can't make that promise to everybody. So we don't want to promise it to everybody and partly deliver. But what we will say is that, you know, if you come from a big feeder primary school, there'll definitely be people there who you are familiar with and who you know. Also on the website tomorrow, once you've got that name, which at the moment can only be a name, of course, there'll be some pictures and some introductions from each of those tutors, so that you and your children can have a look at those. So the first person you meet when you come onto campus, or the first teacher that you meet when you come onto campus in that first day in August or September, whenever that turns out to be, you will already know what they look like and know a little bit about something with them. So that's tomorrow, information arriving there. One optional bit that goes along with that, which we would encourage all students to take part in, but for students to do at home, will be an activity called The Best of Me, and that tries to link the students to a tutor. And the Best of Me activity will be explained, but basically it's an opportunity to write something very briefly to your tutor, to your new tutor, about you. And it could be to do with school, or it could not be to do with school, but it's an opportunity to start that engagement so that they can start to feel they're communicating with somebody at school, but also so that when they arrive, our tutors also feel like they've got to know your sons and daughters a little bit, so that they can be just that bit more personal and that bit more welcoming when that final meeting face-to-face takes place. There will also be the opportunity on that for your sons or daughters to ask a question. And if they want to ask that question, there'll be an email address attached to that activity for them to return it to. It will be important that the activity is returned to school by Friday of this week. We can probably cope with Monday of next week, because, click on them for me, Mrs. Bean. There are 3 activities going to take place over the next week and a half, 2 weeks or so, that Mrs. Rumming and I are both going to be involved in which we will be able to answer some of the questions that the students might raise at that point. So beginning on Thursday of this week at 2 o'clock, which for some of our feeder primary schools is being shown live, Mrs. Rumming and I will be holding a presentation and trying to cover some of the pastoral elements. What's uniform like? Where are the toilets? Where do I go for my lunch? Those sorts of elements of our school with students. And students that are in our feeder primary schools will watch that live, probably with their teachers in their classrooms. And for those of you that don't have that opportunity, that will then appear on the website at the end of the day. And at the end of that session, and the subsequent sessions I'm going to talk about in a moment or two, any questions that we've received by that point, Mrs. Rumming and I will work through and answer those questions, because we're hoping and anticipating that by the time we get to the end of our transition programme, which ultimately finishes next Wednesday or Thursday, by the time we get to that point, we will have answered every single question that every single student might raise, so that they can go away for their summer holidays not worrying about where the toilets are, whether somebody will flush my head down the toilet, or all those other things that we all worried about when we were 11 and we were about to go to our primary schools too. Click it on for me, please, Mrs. Bean. So next week on Monday, we're going to have an introduction to maths, again in the same format, live for some people, later on the website for others, and that will be run by Mrs. Palmer, who's our head of maths, and she will give the students a flavour of what maths is going to be like at secondary school, and probably lead the students through 1 or 2 activities. Again, that will culminate with Mrs. Rumming and I answering some of the questions that have come in up to that point. And then finally, our last activity, if you click over again for me, please, Mrs. Bean. is next Tuesday, when a similar sort of session will take place with Mrs. Butterworth, who's in charge of our Key Stage 3 English. And again, she'll introduce the students to what life is like in English at secondary school. And then that will culminate with Mrs. Rumming and I taking as long as it takes to answer all the questions that the students might have. We always say on transition, you know, the most important thing is that your sons and daughters, and you ultimately, don't go into a 6-week holiday wondering. Please just ask the question. So similarly, as far as the questions are concerned, if you have a question you want asking and your son or daughter fills that best of me question in, please just put it on that questionnaire, on that activity they're returning to us, and we can address your questions as well as the students. Now, I've already had some questions in from some parents, so just to close the bit that Mrs. Rumming and I are doing now, we are just going to answer one or two of the questions that some of you have posed to us already. Do you want to take on to the next screen, Mrs. Beale? And so the first question that we've been asked by parents is, where do students go on the first day that they arrive on campus? And if you watch our newly released video today, we've tried to explain that in some detail so that you get a picture as well. But ultimately, if you're not familiar, if you're familiar with the site, you'll know that you come up the drive and the reception to the Brookvale building is on the left-hand side. It's a long expanse of tarmac with the doors at the end. You can't miss it. And hopefully it will be a nice warm day when your sons and daughters arrive first morning. We'll all congregate there. There'll be lots of us in high visibility jackets lining the route from the gates all the way up so that nobody can possibly get lost. And we'll congregate there. And once it's time for the day to start, we've all congregated, we will take the students into the school by whichever means is most appropriate. In the event that it's wet, we will use our sports saw. But again, check that video out. And again, that will show you where you go to as far as that's concerned. But the big thing to say is, in high visibility jackets, it will be impossible for anybody to get lost.
Another one of the questions that is quite a common one, really, especially as parents having to sort out bags when they first start to come, and pencil cases, etc. We always know there's a big push on pencil cases. There's always a trend in pencil cases, so the bigger the better, really, to get as much stuff in as they can. And things like pens, pencils, black pens, ruler, compass, protractor, rubber, pencil sharpeners, some coloured pencils, and also, quite important, purple pens, which are used in a majority of lessons with the teachers, so that they're really popular. So that's one of the most popular questions.
Okay, another question that parents often ask us and have asked us this year is, are there bike shelters where we can keep our bikes safely? So yes, there are. There are bike shelters in both parts of the building, so both for Key Stage 3 students, and they're based around the side of the Brookvale building. They're locked from just after the students arrive at about 8:50 once all the students are in, and they're not opened again until 3 o'clock. So once bikes are put in there, they're entirely safe and secure as far as theft is concerned. Students that do come on bikes, and we do encourage students to come on bikes, and we know the government is encouraging the use of bikes at the moment, please make sure that their bikes are roadworthy and that students wear a helmet. For the safety of everybody on campus, we ask all students to push their bikes onto campus when they arrive. And more importantly, because they're usually keener to get away than they are to get here, and therefore tend to go a bit quicker, that they don't ride their bikes off the campus, that they push them off the campus as well. Anybody that comes onto campus that hasn't been for a while will also see that our bike racks up at the Groovy building have been improved during the period of lockdown, and they too now are secure and will have a fence around them, which again will mean that bikes are locked in all day.
Another really popular question is around lockers. How much is a locker? How do they obtain a locker? And kindly Mrs. Lee, who runs all the office, has said that locker fee is £25, and that's based on a 5-year usage and is payable via parent pay. Now, this is the equivalent of a higher charge of £4 per year, and then you also receive £5 back when you hand in your key at the end of that period. There's obviously not quite enough lockers for every student, but most years will have enough to meet those for the need. It will be released towards the end of August, she's told me today, and it will be on a first come, first served basis. So you will have that information sent out to you. Obviously, we've got to wait till the year 11 and year 13 bring their keys back, whenever obviously we can obtain those. But all that information will be sent out to you.
Another question we've had asked by parents is about languages. Are the language offers? Yeah, we do languages. Every student does a language. The vast majority of students, that will be French. And for those students who show an aptitude for languages, then they will also have the opportunity to do a second language, which will be the three languages we cover on site are French, German and Spanish. So those are the three language offers that we make on site.
Another relevant question to myself, is there a pastoral person? Well, yes, we do have a pastoral team, of which I manage, and that is, there's a head of year 7, which obviously is myself for next year, head of year 8, which will be Mrs. B, head of year 9 will be Mr. Rumming, head of year 10 will be Mrs. Clark, and head of year 11 will be Mrs. Jordan. And also we do have Mrs. Goddard, who supports all those heads of year. So that is our pastoral team, and we're there to support. We're not precious about, I have to deal with year 7s. We're there for every year. So if they need anything, if it's a fallout, if they're just lost and upset, or there's been something happen at home, we're the team there to support them, and we're always available. And again, on the videos, Mr. Godwin said, there's clear directions as to where our office is.
One of the questions that we're also asked is, are there set times for using toilets? And there are set times for using toilets. Obviously, any students that have a medical condition that means that they need to use the toilets more frequently, then we make special arrangements for them discreetly. So they will have toilet pass or permission given to allow them to use the toilets during lessons. But for most children, this is something you can hopefully do at home to support us. Talk to them about the fact that part of going to secondary school is about becoming more independent. We have frequent breaks. There's a break between every lesson. So they're only ever in a classroom for an hour at a time, and we expect students to use the toilets in between lessons and not go out during lesson times for all sorts of reasons. But if you can start to have that conversation at home, that would be really helpful.
Another question is regarding the play areas outside. Are there designated areas? Well, this year, and I think we started it last year, year 7s will be allowed to go on our tennis courts, probably for the first 3 or 4 months, really, just to get settled in so that they can have their play time. But obviously, usually by that time, they tend to have found other places they want to play as well. But it just gives them a safe area that they can play football or just congregate as a year group. So that'll be their little safe area to play in.
And I think probably the final one from me, I'm not sure if Mrs. Rumming's got any more, is about telephones. Always a hot topic of conversation. Most of us, our parents, in fact, all of us talking to you this evening are parents, and I'm sure as parents, we would sooner our children, when they were your children's age, have had a mobile phone on them for means of safety, particularly if they're travelling sometimes distances from home during the winter. That seems an entirely sensible thing. On the other hand, as the deputy head teacher pastoral in the school, they can also be a source of great conflict and fallout between students themselves and sometimes between students and their teachers. So our rule is very, very simple to avoid any ambiguity or misunderstandings, in that while students are very welcome to bring their phones to school, from the moment the school bell sounds in the morning at 8:40 until the moment it sounds to mark the end of the day at 3:10, phones should be away and not visible for any circumstances at all. Students are not allowed to use them during breaks and lunch times, and we ask them not to do that. And similarly, we also ask parents, if you need to contact your son or daughter, a receptionist staffed all the time that the children are in school, so please ring to school and ask them to pass on any messages that you want to pass on. And if necessary, we can bring your children to the phone. But that makes it far easier for us to police and be very, very clear about expectations with everybody, if we don't have to have discussions with children who sometimes say, well, I've got to have my phone out because my mum's going to send me a text message. Because as you can imagine, dealing with teenagers, eventually they will give us that excuse while they're meanwhile accessing whatever else it is that they wanted to access. So in order that we can just be consistent for everybody's benefit, please can you, go through that rule with your sons or daughters at home, because if that rule is broken, it is one that we have very clear expectations about. If your phone is out, whatever the reason is that you give us for your phone being out, there is every likelihood that it'll be confiscated by the member of staff, given to the head of year, in your case, Mrs. Rummy, and you will have to collect it from her at the end of the day, which is a little bit inconvenient and a little bit of a reminder to students. If they were to do it a second time, which very few people do, because the rules are so clear on this one, then unfortunately it does mean that sometimes we ask parents to come and fetch that from us as well, which just ups the ante a little bit with students and means that as a school, actually, the use of mobile phones during the day, we don't tend to have a problem with, but that's because we're very, very clear and very, very consistent when people do break that particular rule.
I think that's it for the start, but obviously there will be lots more next week.
Thank you very much, both. And I think we're on our final slide, and I think I'm going to hand over to Mr. Teese to finish off this presentation.
So I really do hope you found that useful this evening. Thank you to everyone involved in doing the presentations this evening. As it says there, if there are any queries, please do not hesitate to contact those key members of staff and also myself moving forwards. I'm really looking forward to working with your children in the new academic year. I'm really looking forward to getting to know them all and also to working in partnership with yourselves. So thank you for your time this evening and good night.
Thank you very much, everyone involved. Goodbye.